Thanks for tuning in to the Spread Your Wingspan podcast.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jenny.
And we're your hosts, two friends who immediately bonded over our secret smut addictions. So join us as we journey together through our favorite romance and fantasy stories and discuss all things kinks, female pleasure, taboos, and more.
Make sure to check out the show notes for any spoiler alerts and content warnings. We're happy you're here. Let's get to today's pod.
Hello, Jenny.
Hello, Sarah. We are together again.
Listeners, our summer has been very disrupted by various illnesses and injuries.
Yes. Things have happened this summer, but we very determinedly need to wrap up our season 1.
You said things have happened this summer.
Oh, yeah. It happened one summer.
One summer.
Great setup, Sarah, for our book today.
You just did that so naturally. You didn't even need to.
I do my best.
So we've been off schedule. We have not been recording. So if you are a diligent listener and you've noticed gaps.
Hi, Katie.
That's why. But we're gonna, get back into things.
Yes. And I think that, let's mention two things. One, the books that we thought we were going to get to that we didn't, we're just going to do in season 2, guys.
Correct.
We are going to take a break for a few months. Very happily, we'll come back sometime after January, New Year, TBD.
Yeah.
So we just know we'll save them for season 2.
Yeah. And if you've already read them and you have thoughts, you just table it for a little while.
Yes, please save them. Put a pin in them. Put a pin in them. But the second point I want to make is we are ending on such a beautiful candy-coated note is how I would say it.
Yeah, and that wasn't our intention.
No.
But it's kind of cute. I would say this is the most in line with that kind of you just pick it up for a fun beach read romance novel. When you think, for me, when I think of the romance genre, I think of kind of a book like this.
Yes, the romance, pure romance. Yes, I think there have been a lot of modern, set in modern times romances that I would categorize as the fun beach reads. And I don't tend to gravitate towards them, but after reading this, I was like, oh, this was so fun and cute and just feel good.
Yes.
And I think, we're recording this in August of 2024. I think there's a lot happening in the world and a lot of noise and things happening. And it was really nice to be able to take a break and not feel like I had to work for this book. It was just pure joy.
Yes.
Joyful reading.
Yes. When you were asking me about this, because this is again one I had read based on Book Talk recommendations. It's a very popular, at least it was a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I had already read it, and when you had started reading it, you were texting me. You seemed kind of uncertain at first, and I was like, "This is my ultimate comfort read. It's quick. Mm-hmm. You could read it in a day. It might take a chunk of the day, but you could do it. And it's so comforting to me.
Yes.
It's like chicken soup. You're just slurping it up.
With a slice of chocolate cake after and a warm cup of tea, all the things.
Completely.
And it was a good reminder to me because I think, I don't know if you ever feel this way, but sometimes I look for books to challenge me, and that's fine. I think we all want to be intellectually stimulated and challenged and find new ideas, or, for me, sci-fi and fantasy is just opening the imagination and all of that. And that's all well and good. But to be able to just read a book about two people who meet and the circumstances are kind of quirky, and the impatience I had was oh my God, could we throw another romance trope in here? But it works.
Yeah.
It works. And I had forgotten how delightful that is. It's just predictable? Sure. Do I love it? Yes. Are the characters developed in a fun way? Yes. They're not hollow characters. Yeah. So it has all the quality elements of storytelling.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of your criticisms throughout the pod have been if you feel like a character's arc is not well developed and there's smut and there's romance, you're this isn't working for me. And again, I feel in this, Tessa Bailey is quite good at this. So this is her bread and butter.
Yeah.
This is the kind of book she writes. I've read pretty much everything that she's written. I would say the dirty talk vibes, she's been quoted as the queen of dirty talk. I think that maybe is contestable. That's fine. But the way that the kind of male characters specifically talk in the smutty scenes, I would say can get repetitive across her books. But the character backstories and the romances themselves are pretty delightfully cute and unique book to book for her.
Makes sense.
So if you like this one and you're like, I would like more of this, read her whole catalog. And then the other thing she does, which you've pointed out that you like before, is she does like series. So almost all of her books are not one-offs. They're like, there's these two characters, and then these two friends show up in that book, and then the next book is about those two friends, or siblings.
Cool.
And so you kind of like get to see the characters from all the books in all of the books and follow up with them and stay in the world a little bit longer. It's very cute.
The things that we love about Bridgerton, how the siblings each get, a little bit more developed, depending on the character. Some go away. Hi, Simon. Hi, Daphne. But some stay. So, yeah, that is really lovely. And the second, I know we are going to get into the synopsis, but I am already looking forward to the second book because of that.
Yeah.
I want you to read your synopsis and then, your first theme of the day. I really want to talk about the small town romance trope because I grew up in a small town. And so I have some things to say about that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Synopsis. Piper Bellinger is the consummate LA party girl, famous for being young and beautiful and nothing else. At 28, the longest relationship she's had has been 3 weeks, and the breakup of that relationship leads her to throw an illegal rooftop pool party, which, womp, ends her up in jail. Her infuriated stepfather sends her away to Westport, Washington, the small fishing town where her mom and birth dad grew up. While there, she and her sister Hannah reconnect with their deceased father, their roots, and themselves. Meanwhile, king crab fisherman Captain Brendan Taggart, who is Westport, loves his routines and hates change, struggles to adapt when this LA ray of sunshine blows into his town. He definitely hates her, for sure, except actually he wants her really badly and falls in love with her pretty immediately. The issue, Piper's only meant to stay in Westport for 3 months. What will they do?
Oh, so good, Sarah. Sarah needs to be a New York Times book reviewer, but only for the romance.
Happily, contact me.
Okay, so first theme, small town romance trope.
Yep.
So I had a conversation with a friend who did not enjoy this book, and my first question was, did you grow up in a small town? And her answer was, not really. And so to me, the way that Captain Brendan Taggart is portrayed, I very much I literally grew up in a fishing town. Oh. I grew up with these boys.
Yes.
And dated some of them. And there is something about the singular small town focus that is very appealing. The dedication to the community and everybody knows your business, which I found very annoying, but that's fine. I can appreciate the quaintness and the structure and tradition of that. And so for me, I immediately made Brendan like an amalgamation of all the best parts of the boys that I grew up with.
Love.
And so for me, I like it really gave me some nostalgia for the boys that I dated in high school and after high school, and some of whom I dated after, into my young adulthood. So yeah, she captures the best part of what that means.
Yeah.
To be in love with a man like that, to be in love with a man who his identity really is wrapped up in the community.
Yeah, and that's very it's very atmospheric.
Yes.
Like the romance is with the town almost, like via Brendan. But like Piper doesn't just decide to be with Brendan, she decides to live in this place.
Yes.
For a reason. Like the relationship she has with Abe, like with Opal, her grandmother, the friends she makes, like you get a sense of, she's like, oh, I feel a sense of belonging here that I've never felt before. And that to me is like one of the best parts of the book.
Agreed. I don't think the book would have worked without that.
Totally agree. And like the smells, like you just get such a sense. It's so easy for me to place myself in Westport.
Yeah.
And it's so cozy.
It's so cozy. And her, like when she smells his shirt and it smells like the sea and him and yeah. So I have very lived sense memories of that.
I love that.
And so as that was developing, I was like, oh yeah. I get it. I get it. Yeah. You gotta you know what you're getting in a way.
Yes.
Not that there's a discovery, but it's like so much is lived like out in the open.
This book is like ordering chicken tenders left off the menu, okay?
Yes.
Like, even when they're bad, you're going to enjoy it.
Yes.
Like, you know what you're getting. Are you always going to want to order that? No. But when you want to order it, you want to order it.
Exactly.
Right? Yes.
Yes. You want it crispy, fried to perfection.
With some French fries.
With some French fries.
And some
good
ketchup. Like,
honey barbecue.
Yeah, yes. Like, yeah. And that's, yeah. And so the tropes, the romance tropes in this book, I think are all kind of like that.
Yes.
You know, you get the fish out of water. You get the, like, enemies to lovers, except for, like, heartily. You know, like, they're clearly not actually enemies.
He thinks that she's out of his league at first. Like, this rich girl from LA.
Yeah.
You know, lives a world that he has no idea what it's like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she also kind of feels like he's out of her league because he's very successful and well-respected and works hard.
Steadfast. Reliable.
And she's, like, never had a job in her life. Her fallback job was napping and, like, has only had 3-week relationships and people don't take her seriously. Mm-hmm. And that gets to my next theme, which isn't really a theme, but the dual narrative point of view, I think, works really well in this book.
Yes.
Because it allows both of them to have these kind of inner monologues and to see how they're perceiving themselves and each other. Mm-hmm. Versus I think if it had only been from Piper's point of view, it just wouldn't have worked.
I would not have been interested at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
you need his kind of, like, self-deprecating. He basically, like, therapizes himself in this book. Like, he goes through, which I can understand would be a criticism from some people, he goes through a pretty quick, like, growth early-ish on because he recognizes that he needs to in order to be worthy of this relationship that he sees as a potential, like long, like, wife. Like, yes. I want to be with this person. In order to be worthy of this, I need to get my shit together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's earned. I think he's, like, capable enough to do that. But I can see how some people might think that happened kind of quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I do think for both of them it happens quickly, but hey, we're reading a romance novel. Like, we don't need to drag this out. So I think that also you just kind of accept that things are going to move fast. But the way that their backstories are presented with, you know, him being 7 years after losing his wife and Piper thinking like, oh, the way everybody talks, I thought, like, you lost her last year, you know, like, so she does set it up for him to be ready. Like, he's already done the waiting. That's
true.
And she kind of shows up and he's like, oh, I guess after 7 years, yes, I can move on.
Like, this is my motivation to actually put this work into place. Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think Piper's arc, I think, is a slower one. I think, like, her development happens a bit more, like, in a straight linear, like, climbing throughout the whole book versus his, I think, is a little, like, faster. Yeah. Plateau, you know, whatever.
Yeah. But Piper needs an anchor.
She does.
See that? See that, guys? See that, guys? Ship metaphor.
That's in the second book, in, like, some of there's, like, text banter, and one of them is like, ship puns, they are happening, which is what you just did. Fishing puns, they're happening.
Just call me Hannah, guys. Just call me Hannah.
You got Hannah vibes for sure.
Nice.
Sometimes we need to grow in order to be worthy of a relationship, which I would categorize as Brendan.
Yes.
And sometimes a relationship helps support our growth. Just how I'd categorize Piper.
Yes. Agreed. I think Piper, her dual journey here is learning that she can have community support and then also learning how to stand on her own 2 feet. I think those both happen in tandem for sure. Because, and again, like, if she hadn't done that, if she just all of a sudden was like, Brendan's going to rescue me, which she wasn't, that wasn't how this worked out. I think that would have been very unbelievable. So I do appreciate that Piper really did find her way. And I think also, I'm not sure if I'm jumping ahead or not, but sad that she lost her dad, but I loved the way that she was able to find out more about her dad through the community.
Yes.
That I thought was told really, really
the whole Henry Cross thing is gorgeous.
Yeah. Because it was almost like Brendan. So the way that her father, who died in a crab fishing accident, was very traumatic. It caused her mother to leave this small town that she had gone to. And then she eventually remarried this huge Hollywood producer guy. Yeah. So, you know, Piper grows up in Bel Air, very privileged and vapid. But the fact that she kind of marries somebody like her dad also is a very small town thing. Even though she didn't grow up in a small town, it is part of that small town identity, this, like, generational thing, even though, you know, they weren't father-son. It just seems like the generations take the torch as they move, and that is very much a small town thing. So
yes,
her being able to see how her dad probably acted in the community. You know, there's like a statue to him in the harbor. He was very much a beloved part of the city's town's fabric. So yeah, all these little elements of just why people live in small towns and why people value that small town living, I think is shown really beautifully. For me, there were a lot of reasons why I did not thrive in that environment. And there's a lot there for me that if I look back, I'm like, I maybe would have thrived better getting out of the small town sooner. However, the older I get, the more I realize the benefits and the privileges that you do have from that environment.
Yeah. I think perhaps one of the reasons this is so appealing to me and like so comforting to me is I moved around a lot. I moved like roughly every like 4 to 7 years growing up. So like I never had that sense of like community. And you're absolutely right. Like I think, we really see that in Brendan's father-in-law, that sense of like in like the generation, the torch passing, the boat literally passing from hand to hand. The job passing from hand to hand, and then Abe and then his sons work at the hardware store. Like, but everyone is happy about this. Like, there's not a sense of like, oh, we're stuck here. You kind of get that from Fox in the second book, spoiler alert. But in Fox's backstory, but everyone is like genuinely like the value of what they give to each other outweighs anything else.
Yes.
And that kind of is also seen in them refurbishing the bar.
Yes.
Which is such a cute little subplot. Like,
Crossing daughters.
On the one hand, it gives them something to do while they're there.
Yeah, totally.
But on the other hand, it absolutely is like she's connecting with her deceased father in this way by refurbishing this bar that was his that has fallen into complete disrepair, and making it her own thing. Again, has nothing to do with the romance. It's just really cute character development, and it works. And it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that she falls in love with him because he's shirtless, like building her at this beautiful patio.
The way he's like courting her, doing that. Hannah's like, I think he's courting you.
She has no idea. Piper's so clueless. It's adorable.
He's like, are you ready? And she's like, for what? And he's like, for me to ask you out. And she's like, did you think you needed to build me like a pergola to ask me out? And he's like, no, I needed the time to work up the courage. It's so, come on, you guys. Like, for those of you who don't like this, Katie, I'm sorry. But come on, that's adorable.
So cute.
So yeah, we've talked about already the immersiveness of scene and setting, I think, is really well done. And then we've also talked about cozy romance. Comfort read.
So how many times have you read this?
This was my third or fourth.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just, if I'm feeling like, I don't have anything to do, it's a weekend, I don't have anything to do, or I'm not feeling particularly well, it's a nice little, cutesy. This probably reread, if we hadn't done it for the pod, it would have been a much further away. Yeah. I wouldn't have reread it so soon. Because I am starting to get the thing of,
I remember this
jumping ahead to me a little bit, but the rereads, for example, the dirty talk and the rereads for me, I'm kind of it kind of then starts to grate on me a little bit. Versus the first read, I was like, whoo, yeah,
baby,
okay. That scene where he makes her dinner and then she pours champagne over her boobs and escalates from there. Scene. Right? So good. But then, in rereading it, and not even that scene, but just, some of the language, I'm like,
yeah.
But, again, I think that happens for me. I've noticed in rereading romance novels in general that you do get kind of slightly more cringe as you go along, as you reread more and more.
Which is maybe what I anticipate and why I don't go for them, but that's okay.
Well, you kind of experienced this with Misadventures.
Yes. Well, yes, but that one, well, we already discussed that. We don't need to go into it. But it was more I really wanted that to either be a longer book or just porn.
But I remember this, you were saying the sex scene specifically, you're like, oh, I've read these Sierra Simone sex scenes.
Yes, fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think again, I've been getting some interesting, I think the backlash to Sarah J. Maas on Bookstagram Book Talk is also starting to happen a little bit. And either my algorithm is showing me more of that because of my own feelings, or if that's a community's thing, I'm not sure. But also people are all of her sex scenes sound the same. And it's okay, I think when you're an author and you're writing smut, I don't know that you have in your tool bag many ways to do that.
Yeah, if you're trying to appeal to a wider audience.
Absolutely. And you probably just inherently think of it and describe it a certain way, and it just happens a certain way for you. And so in all of your books, the scenes might vary, the language might vary, the characters, but the vibe is probably going to be the same.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just really needed more Bryson, whatchamacallit sex.
Hunt,
thank you. See,
I'm
already
so
forgotten about
over them at the end, though. I didn't even care. So the banter in this book.
Mm-hmm.
I think the banter is like one of the best elements.
It's good. It was really good to listen to.
I can imagine.
It's great. Well, next time you want to reread it, listen to it.
Yeah, yeah. You like the way that they all speak, so unique and connected to their characters. The way Piper's constantly doing little shimmies, like you can like see it, and I can like hear their voices so distinctly.
Yeah.
I just think that's so well done. It's even cuter in the second book, the banter. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe there's not a ton to say about that. I just think that's a great...
It is good banter. I think that we also are good at recognizing when banter falls flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have counterpoints of where it's like, ugh, that didn't really work.
Or like you're trying so hard to make this charming.
Yeah, and it's just like, missing the mark, guys. This one hits the mark.
It's effortlessly charming. And that's Piper's supposed to be effortlessly charming. So like the Piper sparkle kind of permeates this whole book.
Yeah.
Which is, again, so great. And so, I don't know if you know this, but Bailey was inspired by Schitt's Creek, which she watched during the pandemic. This is a pandemic novel. And she specifically wanted to write a story for Alexis, where Alexis is the main, like, female character, romance heroine, and falls in love.
Interesting. I never watched Schitt's Creek. I've tried to watch it.
My goodness.
Everybody tells me I just have to get past the first season. I've tried. I will someday do it. But I do, obviously, being somebody that is on Instagram, know like kind of memes and everything. So that's fun. Does Alexis in Schitt's Creek eventually become a more solid character?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, cool.
By the end,
that's good
are
to
obsessed with her. Yeah, yeah. And she has a very beautiful romance arc on the show.
Oh, great,
as well.
Cool. That's good to know.
And there's the way the little shimmies are described. Like there is a lot of like you're like, oh, that's such an Alexis thing.
Got it.
And you can really see that. But also at the same time, like Piper is a separate character, so I'm not like envisioning.
Yeah.
What's her name? Anne Catherine Murphy, something like that's her name.
I forget.
Annie Murphy.
I think it's Annie Murphy.
Annie Murphy. Yeah. When I'm thinking of Piper, I'm envisioning somebody else. But I think a lot of like the mannerisms, the vibe is very cute.
Mm-hmm.
We already talked about how she does series books.
I'm looking forward to the second.
You're gonna have to text me. You're gonna have to update me. We were kind of hoping maybe we could squeeze in both in this pod, but
didn't happen.
Life got in the way. We've already kind of talked about your reactions to the small townness of it all, the comfort read of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have ever picked up a book like this if I hadn't recommended? Okay,
100% no, unless I were on my beach vacation. So I do this whenever I travel. I think I've mentioned I try to buy a book by a local author. And so sometimes the only bookstore I can go into is a Barnes & Noble, and they have all the different tables. So if I had been literally on a beach vacation on the hunt for a book, then yes, I would have.
Okay.
In normal life, probably not. But I have been known to buy things based on flashy covers alone. So it's not like a hard and fast no.
The cover's cute.
It is cute.
Yeah.
It's very cute. But again, I don't normally seek them out. I might have to kind of widen my horizons, although Sarah needs to stop assigning me books and then I'll have more time. But I actually do think for season 2, one thought that I had reading it is I think that one thing I've learned from this process of us recording the podcast so far and just coming up with, okay, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to read? What are we going to read together? I do think that I might want some more just vanilla romance, meaning out of romantasy. I don't need vanilla sexy bits, but,
we don't like vanilla stuff like that.
We don't prefer it. Though I do think reading some YA stuff would be fun.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I think that I am wanting for us to craft our syllabus for season 2 to include some more of these, maybe some that neither of us have read, so that we can experience them.
Yes.
Experience them together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very down for that, as long as it's not Colleen Hoover.
No. Although, oh my gosh, can we take a quick
tangent
to discuss It Ends With Us?
Sure.
So sorry, Colleen, you're probably a lovely person, and clearly you have a fan base. But a florist named, sorry, I have like a hair here. I'm very distracted, guys. A florist named Lily Bloom.
Apparently her middle name is Blossom.
I heard that too. I can't. I have a line and I have found my line. However, I do love me some Blake Lively. And so I'm like, do I want to go see the movie in the theater? But then, we don't have to get too deep into this, but knowing the story has domestic violence in it, and
I don't think it just has domestic violence. It's about domestic violence.
Yeah. And then seeing the criticism of the lack of importance that has been put on
like
this
all
story.
the marketing and
stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have some feelings. I don't want to judge it without seeing it. But I'm also wondering if this is going to be in the category of there was a really big opportunity to do some like learning in this process and some teaching. And I don't know if that happened. So I don't know. I have feelings about this, guys.
I have been immersed in reading about it.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Well, maybe let's put a pin on it so we don't take the focus off of what we're doing today. But
it's just one of those things that I've decided I'm an expert in, even though I have not read the book or seen the movie.
Maybe it's a movie that you and I can watch together in a couple of months.
Yeah.
When it gets a little cooler.
Yes.
We just need to, occupy some time.
You can like get back to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, I also think it might be a good just toe dip in to read a Colleen Hoover book and watch the movie, because I think that I can't criticize something without experiencing
That's fair. I've seen like screenshots of pages of her book on Instagram.
Oh, it'll be
on
torture.
The writing and
yes.
in the like we both laugh at our son's big balls is one that I've seen. And it's like, what? like yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
But I feel like in the pursuit of educational experiences,
that's fair. Yeah.
Maybe we should. And, maybe she is very successful. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. Yeah. Not every author is for everybody. But if her books are going to start being made into movies, what fascinates me is what part of the market is that satisfying?
Great question. Yeah. Great question.
Sorry.
A lot of them I've heard have these kind of like sexual abuse, domestic violence kind of undercurrents. So it's like,
what is that tapping into?
Fascinating thing to consider.
Okay, so I actually would like to posit that maybe we do read this and watch the movie and report back, because in my initial foray into book talk, Bookstagram, whatever, everybody's like, you're either a Colleen Hoover fan or you hate her. And then as I got more in, I'm like, maybe I'm never going to read Colleen Hoover.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know.
That this is so true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring it back.
The predictability of romance books. So I thought of this immediately when we were texting in the beginning and you were like, I'm not sure if I'm into this. It's so predictable. And I'm like, but the predictability is the best part. And we've talked about this before. I am a person with severe anxiety, and I either, in rereading a book I've already read, therefore it becomes predictable to me, enjoy things more, and in reading things that are predictable, again, like I feel generally calmer in the experience. And yes, sometimes I like the angst. Yes, sometimes I'm missing the anxiety for sure, but I feel very soothed and very entertained by predictability, versus you have a different relationship with it.
I think you just nailed it. I'm not always entertained by predictability.
Yes.
Now, that's not to say I haven't been in the past, and I'm sure if I sat down and tried to come up with a list of books and movies and TV shows, like, yeah, there's predictability. I think that's, in a way, like the curse of being a well-read, somebody who just delights in storytelling. I think both of us could agree that we are those people. Like, we will just consume good stories because we love it. But stories follow an arc. And so I guess with can predictability entertain me? Yes. Do I prefer being surprised and delighted? Always.
Yeah.
But as someone who also has anxiety, could I benefit from reading more predictable comfort stuff? Yeah, I'm sure I could. Like, after I finished this book, I was texting, like, this was just such a delight. I think I just kept saying this was such a delight. And maybe, so I'm realizing now all of the times that I've read children's books, like picture books to children, and I love reading books to children. People send me your children. I will read to them all day long.
Send me your children.
I love reading children's books.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe there's some childlike thing in me that needs to be tapped into more, you know?
Yes. It's very Once Upon a Time,
Mm-hmm.
Happily Ever After.
Yes.
It's that feeling. And again, do I want to read only that? Of course not. But it absolutely has a very valuable place to me.
Yes.
And again, it's like not everything needs to be the most stimulating intellectually or emotionally or otherwise. You know, I think there's a lot to be said for like, this book was like the perfect size edible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I got like the perfect amount of stoned reading.
Yes.
Like, where I could still like go about my day and do my tasks, but I just felt great the whole time. You know?
So you're reminding me when I had surgery a couple of years ago, because my body cannot process opioids. So I had to work with my doctor to be like, okay, I know I'm going to be in pain. I don't want to, like, I am not going to muscle through this.
Oh my God.
But is there another option? I cannot take oxycodone, hydrocodone. I can't. They make me
Brutal.
very, very, very ill.
That sucks.
And so it does, but also I will do it because the alternative is me being in surgery recovery and puking and not eating and all the things and hallucinating. So not fun. So what my doctor prescribed me was gabapentin.
Oh yeah, my cat takes that.
And so I swear to God, the first day I took it, I said to Grant, I was like, I don't care that I'm in pain. So when you talk about that, the romance novels are my gabapentin.
Yes.
Where it's like you just don't care if anything else is going on. And then you just kind of go about your healing in your day. And it was perfect.
Yeah. And it like sticks with you and then it makes you feel cozy. But it doesn't stick with you and like you really need to keep thinking about it or, you know, you just kind of like.
But I have and it's made me happy.
That's so
I'm
nice.
just like, oh, they're going to have little fisherman babies.
Like somewhere out there in the imaginary world, these two are so happy together.
God, I love the imaginary universes.
Yeah.
Oh, and I had sent Sarah an Instagram thing where it was a very attractive man that people were like, oh, this is Cassian. And I was like, this is Brendan. But he was wearing a ball cap.
And I immediately was like, he needs a beanie.
And I said, no, Piper has influenced him in the fashion world and he now has other hats. So
that's believable.
But we even pretend that they are out there and talk about them like they exist, which is very fun. Yeah.
Thoughts on the smut? We talked about it a little bit. I think so too.
And I also loved that like it was a tad bit spicier than just normal vanilla hetero. Oh, anticipatory. Now we're boning sex. I thought it was great, and I also love that Brendan kind of like made her wait a little bit.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So like it was good. It was the anticipation was good. The sex was hot. The banter was hot. I liked it. It was really fun.
It is fun, yeah. And there's a lot of butt play in her books, I will say. Yeah. So like this is slightly outside of maybe people's normal what they would expect comfort zone. Like in a kind of a very cute, winky, very fun way.
Yeah. Not like some of the other stuff we read, which is very all the combinations.
Correct.
Yes.
The centering of the female pleasure, like, and that's again such a fantasy that these really hot, really masculine men are so focused on making these women come. Like,
hey, Captain.
Yes. And like, I want that from a romance book. Yeah. I don't want to be confronted with real life hetero sex.
No.
Like, sometimes it's phenomenal, but like, what are the odds that it's like this, right? But he's like, you know, fucking her against the wall of the hospital, and she has her first like vaginal orgasm. He's like, yeah, every time you're gonna come first, every time.
I love when she tells her sister, she's like, and she doesn't know what to do. She's like, I had a vaginal orgasm. And you're just like, get it, girl.
And then later on, she's like, maybe vaginal orgasms are making me stupid. Like, yeah, it's so good. You get the sense of, again, like, when I always enjoy, similar to how I love the sex in Fourth Wing, like, you get a sense of the passion and, like, the roughness and the speed and, like, how much they want each other.
Yeah, and they deserve it. They deserve that coming together.
Yes.
It's like, they deserve that. It's like, when you think of the best parts of when you first meet somebody and that the one thing that you can never get back, that I don't know yet how good this is going to be. And then when it is good and you're like, oh.
And afterwards you're like, what?
This is life altering. And, you know, not that that's the only thing. I just think that that's one the one thing that you can never get the first time back. You can never get the second time back. You can never get the third time back. And, things can stay hot and delicious and juicy and whatever. This book really gives you that like, oh, I remember what that part was.
Yes.
And I love when a book does that really well.
Yes. And then like how much they're pining for each, like how much they want each other.
Yeah.
And like, totally recapturing that sense of you're like, I know we are gonna fuck at some point. Like, and you're like, and I can't wait. Yeah. And almost like the build up to it is as satisfying as the sex.
Agreed. Yes.
The chemistry. It's just such well rendered chemistry. Again, the dirty talk, I think, Brendan is the very talkative in bed. As I'm reading it, I think I had this thought during my first read as well, but I'm like, how do they have enough breath to say those many sentences? Like, and like, how does it work with like the rhythm of the thrusting? Like, what is the timing of all of this? Like, that's my only, like, it pulls me out of this scene.
Just had this vision of Sara in an alternate universe directing like feminist-driven pornography. And like, guys, make sure you go slow enough. Like, how do we
take a pause?
How do we temper the thrusting so I can breathily hear you with pronunciation? The dirty talk.
I mean, sometimes it's like 3 sentences. You're like, Brendan, how are you doing that?
Actually, the shirt you're wearing right now would be a very good director's shirt.
Oh yeah. I'm going to write book reviews / synopsises, and I'm going to direct feminist porn.
I mean, you're going to direct feminist porn about a book reviewer. It's
all coming together in a podcast studio.
Guys, I tell Sara all the time that things we talk about, I'm like, you need to write that.
Because I often have ideas. Like, I thought of a really good idea for a cute queer romance about 2 synchronized divers who fall in love. So I thought of it, I was like, that would be such a good book. So
good. And I was like, in capital letters, you have to write this.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Okay. So, yeah, the smut is smutting. I would say it's not, again, like, wildly out there in terms of what they're doing, but in terms of like, whoa, like this got spicy. Like you maybe don't want anybody catching you over your shoulder while you're reading it, kind of thing. Like, yeah, or out in public if you're listening on your AirPods, you'd be like, I hope this isn't like projecting out into the whole world somehow. Like, perfect level of I think getting a little blush while you're reading it.
Totally.
But it's not going to scandalize you by any means.
No.
Yeah.
If you live in our modern world and pay attention to modern media, this is not going to scandalize you.
If you've read any of the other books we suggested, you're going to be like, oh yeah, no big deal.
NBD.
NBD. Okay, so another thought I had was, yes, we are a romantasy podcast. We have done some like straight romances, several I think at this point. And this is I think the most like romance, put it in that category.
This is the biggest crowd pleaser romance that we've read.
Perfect way to describe it. But I also kind of feel like all romance is also fantasy, right? Like all romance kind of is romantasy. Obviously, doesn't have magic, doesn't have world building, doesn't have alternate universe, all that stuff. Like
no vampires.
Right. So like that's obviously what romantasy is, but like the element of like, of course it's a fantasy. Mm-hmm. That's why we read it, really separates it, I think, from literary fiction.
Yes.
And it makes sense to me that why I gravitate to both fantasy stories and romance, and why the combination of the two is my favorite thing ever. Like, I want to step outside of, there's absolutely value. I do read a lot of literary fiction as well, you guys, but like I was an English major in school, but like, you don't always want to read about how life is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. We kind of know what life is.
Yeah, and sometimes that's going to be absolutely the most important book you've ever read, and it will change your life to have read it.
Yeah.
And obviously also it's like so important to get other people's, like to learn, to spread your horizons, right? Mm-hmm. But when I think about just like what's going to make me happy, it often is something that involves an element of fantasy.
With a happy ending and a once upon a time.
Ideally, but not always. Because again, in fantasy stories, that's not always the case.
That's true.
Sometimes you finish it, you have to go for an hour-long walk, as I've said many times before. Yes. And remind yourself that your husband didn't do anything wrong.
He is in no way involved.
He's not involved.
He doesn't have a dragon or a wyvern.
Character in the story.
Sometimes we need to remind ourselves.
Sometimes we... My poor husband.
Hi, Tyler.
He goes over, he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, you did this terrible thing. No, it wasn't.
And he's like, is there a dragon next to me right now? No.
I didn't become venom, Sarah. I don't know how many times I could tell you that. Okay. Rating for this book.
I would give this a solid 4.
Out of 10?
Oh, God, I keep forgetting we're 10. 8.
Yeah, I was going to
8.
say, oh my
No.
God, Jenny.
8. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say the same. 7 to 8.
Yeah.
Spice rating. How many peppers?
2 spicy peppers.
Yeah. I was going to say 2. Maybe for some people it's a 3.
Yeah.
I don't, I think your mileage may vary, but I think it's a 2 as well.
I think a finger in the bum lends itself to it.
And then the cute little, are we not going to talk about the finger?
So cute.
So cute.
So cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 spicy peppers.
2 spicy peppers.
Solid
Agreed.
2.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on this?
No final thoughts. I think we did a delicious wrap up for our season 1. I think we are eagerly anticipating the start of season 2.
Yeah.
We're going to come up with a really good syllabus, guys. I told Sarah we could have a vampire arc.
That's how excited I am about it, you guys. This is something I already knew was happening.
No, I think that's it. I think I will leave some room in my reading for some more Tessa Bailey-esque.
But first you need to finish reading all of Blood and Ash and Flesh and Fire.
I'm saving that for winter.
Okay.
That's like that's gonna be my deep winter hibernation.
Yeah.
I need it dark. I'm having a hard time reading vampire stuff in summertime.
This is fair.
It's just there's too much sunshine for me to really get into the
Well, the gods don't walk in the sun, so you can't read in the sun.
Exactly. Yeah. Summertime is for Tessa Bailey.
This is fair. Okay, yeah, I think you're gonna really love the second book. Very much eager to hear your thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
Any wrap up of the season 1 thoughts?
No, I'm just really happy. Go us that we did this.
We did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been delightful. For those of you who have gotten in contact with us, either through Instagram or otherwise, loved hearing from you guys. Please keep in contact with us, even as we are not recording for a little while.
I'm gonna be working on some fun website stuff during our little break. So that's gonna be new and improved by the time we come back for season 2. So
featuring our glossary stuff, right?
Our glossary. Yeah, I got some things to finish. At some point we will announce a syllabus for season 2. So if you are reading along, you will be welcomed to continue to do so with us.
Stay tuned. Yeah, it's been a delight. Thank you all for listening.
We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yay.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Spread Your Wingspan podcast.
We would love to hear what you think about our topics today. Be sure to connect with us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
You can find us on both with the handle @Spread Your Wingspan, and all the links and more fun stuff are found on our website, spreadyourwingspan.com.
And if you have a book or author you want us to check out, send us an email at hello@spreadyourwingspan.com to tell us.
We hope you tune into the next episode.